For Sora, for example, which I worked on for a long time, I think people come in and they're like, do I just write like Marvel movie, enter, and then it generates a 2.5 hour major motion picture or something like that? And it's like, that's not the idea. Like the idea is you're just like,
I would say that it would probably have the worst box office sales in the history of film if that was the case. Welcome to Creative Coordinates, a podcast highlighting the thinkers, makers, and doers from the WSA community and beyond. In each episode, we sit down with voices shaping culture, building bold ideas, and moving the world forward. Today's guest is Joey Flynn, a product leader at OpenAI and one of the creative forces behind some of the most influential digital tools of the last decade. From Facebook and Instagram to his current work at ChatGPT, Joey's career spans product design, startups, and storytelling. Now, I should mention that some of this outline, fittingly, was prepped with some help from ChatGPT. So if anything's off, just blame the tools or maybe compliment them. Either way, excited to have you here.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Our friendship started because we were sitting next to each other.
15th floor.
15th floor OGs at WSA. And given the work you guys were doing 2 years ago behind closed doors, your door was not open for me to, even though OpenAI should be open door policy, it was closed at that time. And one day it was open at the end of the day and I introduced myself and we've become friends. So it is a pleasure to finally get this interview scheduled.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
So how did your early interest in design and technology start?
It really started maybe in, high school. Both of my brothers played in bands and I played in bands too. And so there was this, MySpace at the time, which will age me, but that was kind of the place that you did like distribution and graphic design. It was good, we all played in like metal bands. So that was kind of the place. And so my brothers are really talented musicians, me less so, but I was like, maybe if I can like floss out their MySpaces, that can be my in to like hang out with them. And so that was kind of what started, like writing some front end code and, using Photoshop to design MySpace themes and merch and stuff for their bands. And that was the beginning.
Is there any design remnants on the internet of those early MySpace pages?
I sure hope not. Yeah.
You've come a long way.
You kick me out of the room right now for sure.
And kind of as you were maybe going down that path with MySpace and design for your brothers and beyond, was there like a moment when it all clicked and you knew this was a path forward for you?
Yeah, for sure. So after high school, I went to University of Washington. And I originally was like going to major in like English or philosophy. And then I had to get some extra course in to like complete some requirements. And there was a course on like design. And I was like, oh, this might be easy. Just like coast through and, then focus my work on the things I wanted to focus on. And then like the first day I remember being like, one, it was super difficult. It was like really, really interesting. But in my mind, it was like, design a MySpace theme and, or something like that. But we had this really amazing professor. And I remember there was this assignment actually where it was like a grid of squares. And this was like the opening assignment. And you could like fill in 12 of them. And it was like create the most pleasing composition by like filling in 12 squares. And so everyone in the class, this was like the intro class. So everyone did it. And then the next day, like our teacher went through and like picked the best 10 and just talked about like why compositionally they're in. And I was just like, when you get that assignment, when you're like, bombed out, 19-year-old, you're like, what do you even mean, And then I remember like that first assignment, I was like, whoa, there's, this is like,
were you picked or not picked as
I
a top 10?
wasn't picked in that one, no. But then at that point, I was like, okay, I got to like, invest everything I can into this because it was so interesting.
And then did you end up supplementing that original course with other design courses, or that wasn't senior year when you first?
No, that was freshman year, yeah. So after that, then I scrapped English and philosophy, and I just took like only only design courses,
Got it.
basically. Yeah.
And was University of Washington, I'm sure there was connectivity to Seattle and Microsoft or even Amazon at the time?
Totally, yeah. That was really big. That was more in the engineering school,
Okay.
though. In like the design school was in the School of Art, and our school was a little bit more felt like a post-war bunker, and the engineering school was like the Paul Allen School, and it had like
Yeah.
LEDs and like rope swings and stuff, and so it was a little bit different, but it was still really special.
And so you pushed through that, and then post-college, your first job was at Facebook?
Yeah, so a friend of mine who was in the design program too, he was an engineer, but he wanted to go to like design school, and so we worked on a ton of projects together during our time there. In every summer, he was going down and interning at Facebook because he was like a front end engineer there, basically like slash designer. And so then when we all graduated, Facebook only had engineers. They had like a really small design team, but they were all basically engineers too. And so he went down there and was like, hey, we should hire some people who like aren't technical. Like we should hire people who like are
From the bunker.
just like from the bunker. Exactly. Get some foot soldiers in here. And so he ended up getting me and one of our other good friends, like basically on his name. And we interviewed and they were like, we're not hiring these guys. And then he was like, you just have to like try. And so that's when we moved down there and started. Yeah.
And you landed that job. What group was that in? Job one at Facebook. Doing what?
The first thing I remember working on was, I think my first project was Profile, like Facebook Profile. And I was working alongside another designer, and it was like the second evolution of like the wall. If you remember, like the Facebook wall, like Newsfeed had just come out, and people could, like previously, to like post to somebody, you would go to their profile page and you would like post on their profile, like, hey John, what's up? Like that. And so this was like this an evolution, the second evolution of that.
And did you know right away, did you feel like you were in over your head stepping into a place like that, or you naturally felt at home and that you had found a place that you could excel?
It felt super at home. I loved it. Yeah, it was so fun. I also had like zero other things going on in my life. I had moved down there. I didn't know anyone except for my two friends that were at Facebook. And so like I was able to just work, 23 hours a day and like really, really try to cut my teeth.
And if you even look at fast forwarding to today and seeing all the tools that are available, sitting in a seat that you once sat in with the workload, those 20 hours a day could have been more efficient. How do you look at where technology has come versus what you were doing year one in the business?
Yeah, like tremendous leaps and bounds in every facet. Like we were using Photoshop, which I know like people use now, but it's like a photo editing tool, and we were designing interface. That's what like interface designers used to use. But now, like even in that, there's like it went from Photoshop to Sketch, and now it's Figma, and then obviously things like image generation and stuff like that are like way, and ChatGPT for writing and presentation and storytelling, copywriting. Everything has changed like seriously.
And given that you've cut your teeth through like almost 2 decades, right? 15 plus years now?
Yep.
10 plus years, 15 plus years?
Yeah, I think 2009 was when I started. So yeah, like
15 years.
Yeah.
When you now meet the Joey Flynn, 23-year-old graduating, let's say even from a Washington or whatever school, is it helpful that you went through all the pain to create what you did? Did that teach you lessons that are applicable to design today or create today, or even to mentor the next generation?
Yeah, I think it is, but I also think anyone who's like been through that always likes to reminisce about like, we had to, cut the foam core and, spray mount our posters on the wall, like, so I'll be one of them and say, I think it was really helpful. And also our school was, I think this is why they didn't want to hire us, was our school was extremely rooted in like, Bauhaus, like Swiss modernism, super graphic design, like, like publication, poster, information graphics, but like all like typography, grid systems and like that kind of thing. And so that's something that is maybe, I think, less emphasized now. And so I will say like that was very helpful, even going to my first job where everyone all the other designers there were more like internet, kids, which was awesome in its own right. And they had a totally awesome perspective that I didn't have. But I think going through that whole phase was great. And the 23-year-olds now, they don't have like phone number, right? They're just like, here's my Discord handle and like, my GitHub, and like they grew up in just a totally different place, like coding Roblox games and like, doing that kind of thing. And so
Your interactions with the team you work with or manage today, are you learning more from them? Are they benefiting from all of your years of knowledge and experience? Or does it cut both ways?
It cuts both ways for sure. Yeah. Like the new class, if you were to call it that, have an entirely different perspective, they're like invigorated in totally different ways and just grew up in a different atmosphere, especially like speaking of like AI, like they've been using that for, 3 or 4 years now. And so they think about everything entirely differently.
The consumer, right, which it's ultimately all about, the customer experience.
Totally.
What have you seen are similarities all these years later in like those early day timeline, Facebook to today, what an OpenAI ChatGPT user, do you feel like there's a lot of similarities or it's just a completely different world of customer expectations?
I think it has evolved quite a bit, like especially from 2009. There were just way fewer players. Social media, for example, was just way more in its infancy. Where now, like every pattern, every trick, every type of, like every idea has been explored there now. Not everyone, there will always every few years be some new breakout thing like TikTok or something. But TikTok had this like amazing innovation where they were like, oh, the like end state of social media is entertainment. It's not like your friends, because like it early Facebook was like your friends from college, right? And then that felt like, whoa, that's like crazy eye-opening world. Then it's like friends and family. Now your parents and your cousins are on it. And then that evolved. And then TikTok was just like, what if, like your friends are interesting kind of, but what if we just showed you like the most interesting thing globally at any given second? And that's, at least now that's kind of like the end state, and they discovered that first.
And as they're serving up what we'll call a new age friend or something you think you could relate to in that example using TikTok, do you think that's also one of the weaknesses that's out there, is you're being served up stuff that you think you understand, but it may not be what it's advertised or it's presented as, versus the early days where it was your friend, you knew what you were dealing with.
Yeah,
for good and bad.
Totally. And again, that's another one of these things that cuts both ways. And I'm not saying that like their insanely, amazing algorithm is good or like it's definitely good at what it does, and they have some objective function that they've set for it, like daily active users or engagement or time spent or something, and they're kind of the best in the world at that. But I think kind of like maybe what you're alluding to, that can have a bunch of,
it's almost like is what you see, what you get.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there sometimes it holds up, and other times it may be mismatched. What you think is the person from online may not end up being. So you started in like the big tech world, or what became big tech. I don't know when you started how big Facebook was. I assume it was a real significantly sized company.
Yeah, it was like 1,000 people, I think. Yeah.
You went in there for a bunch of years and then eventually decided to start your own business thereafter, right?
Yeah.
What prompted you? You're inside a company's 1,000, I'm sure much more when you left, to then go out and start your own business?
Yeah. So I have super fond memories of Facebook, and I love it, and I'll never say anything bad about it. Everyone has their own take on it, but it was so formative for me. But my friend Drew, who was the one who stuck his neck out for me originally to get my job, he was my manager in the final days of me being there. And basically, it came to this point where I'd been there like 5.5 years. And I was kind of looking for a new project, and I like all of them that I was kind of thinking about. I was like, I kind of had an idea what the next 2 years was going to look like, if no matter which one I chose. So I was like, I don't know if that's like exciting enough. And it's hard to leave a place like that, but I was like, maybe I'll just like do. And I had no idea what I was going to do. So I went in to Drew, my manager, and I was like, Drew, I think the time has come. I'm not like flipping a desk and storming out of here, but I was like, I think I got to leave. And then he goes, yeah, like I'll leave with you. And I was like, all right. And so no plan, no anything. And we both just left together, and we're like, let's just start a company and figure out what we're going to do.
And that name was Unity and Variety?
Yeah, Unity and Variety. Yeah, for sure. Which, going full circle on that name, that was what our professor, because Drew and I went to school together, that was like our professor's kind of little quip about like, design principle is like unity and variety are like two of these like kind of this like core tension that you want, or like that, you'll find in really interesting design work.
That business lasted a couple years. You built something there?
Yeah, the first thing we did, we called it like the palette cleanser, was we built like a mobile game. And, that actually went pretty well. We got like, top 10 game on the App Store. And we knew that we weren't going to be like a gaming company or anything, but we just wanted to do something totally different first. And then we started working on like multiplayer productivity software, which we were doing like collaborative slides. So like a competitor to Google Slides. But our kind of angle was Google Slides, Keynote, PowerPoint. Were all quite literally like designed for like giving keynotes where it's like crazy, like super powerful layout tools and type tools. And like the default was this blank canvas, and you spend all this time, designing it. And there's no inherent rules to the product. So you can have a slide, like you've probably seen a slide deck of like, that has like 12,000 words on it, like on one slide. And you're like, can you present? Like, is this only as readable if you're like Steve Jobs presenting it at the Apple keynote or something? And at Facebook, we knew that like every presentation we gave was done 4 minutes before the meeting. And so we were like, oh, let's design like a presentation tool, but more for like internal meetings, or these like really quick, like we kind of govern a lot of the rules, and it's more just about like typing in quick things, dragging and dropping images, and we handle all of the design. And that
ultimately got acquired by Salesforce?
Yep.
Or a Salesforce entity?
Yep. Yeah. So
you went through that arc, leaving a big shop, yeah. Startup, successful, exit, and then that forced you a little bit to go back into a big institution?
Yeah. And it was like a smaller institution within a bigger institution. It was this company called Quip. That one was ran by one of our previous coworkers from Facebook. He started that company. And right when we were about to launch our product, we were like, oh, we should meet with our friend Brett, who ran Quip, and just get his perspective, because he was building the same thing but for documents. And then his advice, he was like, it's super hard. Like, the only way you can do this is kind of like bottoms up, like get people at companies using this, and then try to have so many people using it that then like they're kind of forced to buy it. And so he's like, my only advice is like that you guys should just do it here. So.
And between you and your partner that were running that business, who did you lean on to even execute a deal like that? To be acquired? Is that just you were professional wingers?
Yep. Two boneheads. Yep, that was it. And we loved our friend who ran the other company, and they were super, super awesome and super fair. And so it never turned into like crazy tactical warfare or anything like that. It was very, Very, very cut and
And
dry.
even fast forward to another company you created thereafter, right?
Yep.
Global Illumination. What were the lessons from that original journey, building a company, selling it, going back to how you approached Global Illumination years later?
Yeah, so that first one, we raised no money. We were just like, let's go and just make every decision ourselves because that sounds really fun coming from a place that's like, a bigger company. And Global Illumination, like we raised a lot of money and we had employees and we had, you know, so there was just a lot more complexity there. It was the time of my life. It was the best, but wasn't as simple as just like two boneheads working out of a friend's office. Yeah, was actually like an entirely different beast. But
And that company was acquired, and that's how you kind of got connected to OpenAI.
yep, yeah, yep. That company got acquired by OpenAI 2 years ago, and so since then been.
Were you familiar of what OpenAI was doing and kind of how they were thinking about growing the business? And it just was like, we got to find a way to do something with this group, or they saw the potential in what you were building or your team, or was it a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of everything. And it was really funny because our team, this is going to sound like I'm a gaming company guy or something. We were also building a game at that company and we were 8 people, but our team we only had one person who had ever made a game before, like outside of me, but I made like this little endless runner mobile game. It was nothing real. We had one person, one of our team members came from Riot Games, which is like one of the biggest domestic game companies. But like, my two co-founders were these guys, Thomas Dimson and Taylor Gordon. They were both machine learning engineers. They wrote the first version of ranking for Instagram. So, like, previously Instagram was chronological. Them and their team wrote the first version of ranking that like changed the course of everything, basically. So we had them, and then we had the rest of our crew was just like the most like infrastructure like developer of a lot. Like we had this team that definitely shouldn't have been making a game, but we were because we were all very excited and passionate about it. And so I think what had happened was everyone was super into AI, and we were using AI a bunch with our game, like Microsoft Copilot Copilot with like VS Code and doing a bunch of stuff with like the NPCs in the game that were and using like text to speech and a bunch of these other things. So we were all really excited about it. And GPT 3.5 had just come out, and we were all like super, super excited about that. And I don't think we ever would have sold the company or done anything other than what we were doing unless it was OpenAI. And then one day they had just reached out and that was like, yeah, it was super, super tough decision because we were so happy and like it was awesome, but it just felt like, a crest, like the wave was cresting, and we should all just have that experience.
And since I met you and just casually said, where do you guys work? And you said OpenAI, my jaw dropped as a consumer because I'm like, come on, this is like the best thing I'm seeing in tech right now. And you two guys are the New York team here. So that was fortuitous and serendipity.
Totally.
And the last 2 years, I'm sure, being embedded within the company have been a little bit of a good rocket ship journey.
Totally. It's been incredible in like totally crazy, but in all the ways that you want your job to be, in like the way that you spend your time. And so, yeah, it's been the ride of a lifetime for sure.
What I find amazing is when an everyday person, whether it be my parents or a non-technical friend of mine, they keep reading about AI. They obviously know what's out there. To me, OpenAI is one of the easiest tools in ChatGPT just to dive into it. And when their light bulb moment goes off, that wow, they could use this and they see the power of it. And I don't know what. Again, we're roughly same age, I can't recall anything else that has that big of an impact to an everyday person. And that it is amazing to see that.
Yeah, it's so cool because I mean, like the use, like it's so general. Like the intelligence is so general that everyone can find something. Like, you know, we were just talking with Phineas, and he was like, oh yeah, we're using it for a bunch of our production stuff. And, you know, I was just visiting some cousins, and they were like using it to make the logo for their son's lacrosse team, you know, and like just these, like, everyone has their own way to do it, which is, you know, is a double-edged sword in some way, where it's like, what do you do with the thing that can do everything, you know? But it is so cool the way, like, it's so exciting the way that people have found to, you know, benefit their lives is super cool.
Looking at the WSA environment, which we both know is a creative place.
Totally.
And I'm not a history buff, but if you just kind of look at the Industrial Revolution for what it was that time in history and how it changed trajectories for people, for businesses, for families, whatnot, I do believe that we're in this moment of like a creative revolution, and the tool is only as good as the user, right? The tool is amazing, like you're saying. So what is just like your personal take on creative people kind of now, you know, technology being democratized and how creatives can win essentially over the next decade?
Yeah. I mean, I use it for everything. And so I'm maybe like you know, I'm biased in my own ways, but I use it for everything. And again, going all the way back, like I'm, you know, maybe you know, I'm a fledgling engineer at best, but with AI assisted tools, it's like I can commit code to chatgpt.com, you know, like the biggest, you know, one of the biggest websites in the world with that. And so the other cool thing too, and again, this is not, you know, you didn't pay me to say this or anything, but everyone who I've met on 15, who, when we get to chatting and we talk, like everyone's using it and is really excited about it in like their own way. So that's kind of inspiring at this place that, again, I don't think there's another tech person or like, you know, on my floor, and everyone is super excited about it, like building little websites or using it to edit photos.
I've tried to, if I was your manager, your business manager, you are a celebrity and you don't advertise, but when people hear OpenAI, it's not an everyday passerby that you come in contact with. So you're like, this is the engine that's changing my life. Here's someone that's playing a role in it.
Oh my gosh. No, definitely. Well, I mean, when Ian and I were here, Ian, who is the head of design at OpenAI, me and him shared the office.
Sure.
We were like, just don't, like, everyone's so cool here. Like, don't tell anyone what we do because they're going to like stuff us into a locker or something like that, you know? And so we tried to, you know, keep a low profile. Yeah.
But ultimately, I'm a believer that it's a tool.
Totally.
Creatives with a tool in their hand that's user-friendly is an unlock. Is that the kind of way you see it as well?
Yeah,
philosophically?
100%, yeah.
And on the inverse of that, what would you say is like one of the biggest myths and or misconceptions about AI that, again, it's not my perspective, but that you tend to read about or hear that's out there?
Well, I think maybe my answer for like both of those is I feel like in like creative endeavors and like my own work, I think the most important part of it is like iteration, like ideation and iteration, and maybe like we could even use writing as an example, because that's obviously a huge use case. Is like if you're writing a story or you're making a film or you're doing, you know, like imagery, if it takes a long time to produce one direction, then that's time that eats into you exploring a bunch of other directions. And like, you'll never get to the result that you want unless you can like do a ton of iteration and a ton of variation and like basically see every possibility in the space that you're in and then choose one and refine it. And so I think, especially for like creative endeavors, like, you know, you might not, you know, like I think a lot of people come in and like for Sora, for example, which I worked on for a long time, I think people come in and they're like, do I just write like Marvel movie, enter, and then it generates a 2.5 hour major motion picture or something like that? And it's like, that's not the idea. Like the idea is you're just like, oh, like what, you know, what kind of mood will this shot?
I would say that it would probably have the worst box office sales in the history of film if that was the case.
Yeah, and like so, I think
it's a good problem.
Like Sora is a really good example of this, which is like it's this tool that you can use for anything. And like it has this, feature that lets you extend footage. And so you can like be like, oh, what would happen if it held this like for 2 more seconds, or like if it cuts this way or does that. And like to go back and reshoot something like that either may be impossible or insanely expensive. And so for you to just be able to like quickly iterate again and be like, is this the right shot? Is that the right thing? Like what happens if we X, Y, and Z, and be able to explore all those really fast for really cheap. I think that's to me like the big unlock for that's the power of the tool, but it's like the person using that
And
tool.
what's the section within Sora that people can see the work of others and be inspired, like almost the community effect of users and use cases?
Yeah, if you hit like Sora.com, it's like basically a feed of images and videos that people have created and chosen to share.
And since that's all public, essentially, what are some examples where you're just like, that is such a killer use of Sora, right? Because you have all these creatives just throwing their ideas into the funnel. Like, is there something that you just like, when you saw that, you're like, good job, like kudos?
There's so much cool stuff. Yeah. The thing that's really cool is like there will just like every day or every couple days, there's like a new trend that kind of sweeps through that like feed. So the one, I don't even know what these things are called, but like starting yesterday, there's like, this is maybe a thing from like the 90s, but there are these little things where you like assemble these beads and then use an iron to like press the iron, and it creates this like bead art. There was like, 100 of those on the front page yesterday of just people using it for that. Or like, obviously the Studio Ghibli thing was like super huge, or like the, like that meme that everyone was posting about, or the anime thing. And then things like, there was one that everyone was making action figures of themselves, where they were saying like, ChatGPT, based on everything you know about me, like design a packaged action figure.
I saw that. That was trending.
Yeah.
I like the roast. I like the self-roast when you're with someone.
Yeah, totally.
And it just roasts. You need someone that knows you, a husband, wife, best friend.
100%. Yeah.
Especially if you use it in a wide array of use cases. If you only use it for one segment, it kind of doesn't know you the way that if you literally use it for everything, to self-roast is classic.
Totally.
For those that haven't done that, that's my recommendation. So you're at a point now where, like, even just jumping onto that, what we were just saying, if you have a team that you manage and work with, right?
Yeah, not manage. I'm just an individual contributor.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you're in a place that's building something like OpenAI is doing on many fronts, how do you balance the ideas that come from within the team versus the users and the use cases, like we're saying, that you see pop up? Is it a balancing act, or is the group have the vision, you're driving the ship, and you kind of don't look to what's happening day to day because that can veer you off course?
No, it's totally, and this goes across like, the work at like Facebook and Instagram too. It is some balance because, in some ways, like there are goals based on, the mission of the company that you kind of want to make sure that you're striving to achieve. But then you always have to listen to the user because, again, they're the people who are getting the value out of it. And with any of these things like, Instagram, Facebook, ChatGPT, you have to always make sure that like you're providing value to the people who are using it. So it's a balancing act.
And is it easier or harder these days because maybe there's more transparency or more data or more analytics to make adjustments on the fly because you have so much information at your fingertips? Totally. Is it a double-edged sword?
Yeah, yeah. And it really depends on the company, right? And like the team that you're on, and like companies that I think are like really bold and have really strong conviction and principles. They can make decisions that they feel like are right based on a number of different factors. But then there are other things that, like, obviously you don't want to do something that like tanks the things that you're trying to achieve and like because that's some signal that people are losing value based on that change. But it's you can take the information and use it as gospel, or you can use it as like the spirit. And so I think it just requires strong conviction and like really strong principles.
So we have a segment on the show that we call Rocket Rounds. I didn't prep you on this. You said before I didn't pay you to say what you did about the 15th floor. On the flip side, I didn't give you any color as to what these questions would be.
Yeah.
No curveballs. It's really meant to be quick hit or long form. You could go with it. So we'll do a bunch of these if you're down for it.
Hit me.
This is the rocket round. Okay. One thing you do every morning without fail.
Well, I have 2 kids, so make their school lunches. Take them to
What's
school,
Joey's
yeah.
best school lunch that he whips up?
Oh my gosh. Quesadilla, blueberries, if I'm feeling spicy, an M&M or 2 in there, but yeah.
There you go. As long as your wife doesn't find
Yeah.
out, right? All right. The first creative project you remember being proud of?
Probably a T-shirt for my brother's band.
And plug for your brother's band. The band is?
No longer exists, but their name was Thriller. They were
okay. And your other brother's band that I got to meet?
Yeah. Haven't done merch for them, but
okay.
Yeah.
They need you to.
Yeah.
I know you're a big sneakerhead in my research. Is that true?
I have some shoes, yeah.
Sneaker you've collected that you'd never sell?
Geez. Honestly, these aren't sneakers, but my jellies, these are like I wear these every day. These are my favorite. Yeah, I got these in Italy.
How about most underrated sneaker release in the last decade?
My gosh.
How about
I'll come back to that.
Come back. You get the past. I was telling someone before it's like $100,000 pyramid. They didn't know what I was talking about. Creative side project that still makes you smile.
A friend of mine, we made hangers. Yeah.
I think I still owe you a response. Where are those hangers? Yeah. We got a plug. We got an audience. What are you looking to do with those hangers?
I have 10,000 hangers that are very, very special if anyone needs them.
All right. Dream collaboration. Any designer, artist, or brand?
Oh, my gosh. I'm also like very into furniture. And so the person who makes these chairs, like the Plia chairs, they have all of this furniture that's like kind of transformable that like either folds up or turns into something else. That's my dream furniture. Yeah.
The Flynn collection.
Yeah.
Is there anything you do collect other than sneakers and being into furniture? Any other collections?
I also collect vintage Italian sportswear. Yeah.
Elaborate.
So it started with like there's a brand called Stone Island. So I collect like Stone Island from 82 to 99, those years. And then I also collect a brand called Iceberg and Missoni. And so.
Interesting. Most inspiring use of AI that you've seen recently?
Too many to count, but the one that made me the happiest was my cousin who made the lacrosse team logo with ImageGen. Yeah, I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. His son drew it.
What's the team name? Do you remember?
I don't even
remember.
What
market? Where are they based?
Virginia.
Yeah. All right, watch out for that logo. We're going to be selling them on the podcast page. A design book, podcast, or article that you'd recommend?
Maybe like one of my favorite designers of all time is this guy, Joseph Mueller-Brockman, and he has a book about grids, and that's kind of like the Holy Bible.
Going back to your Washington grid.
Yeah, totally.
Most overused word in tech right now?
Probably agents.
Your go-to creative escape?
Going out to dinner.
Come on, I thought you were going to say WSA.
WSA,
come on.
There we go. No, that's not an escape though. No. That's my home. Yeah.
Second home, third home. Favorite city outside of New York City for creative energy?
Probably, not to sound like a contrived answer, but probably Tokyo. Yeah.
It's amazing. You've been to Tokyo?
Many times. Okay. Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to do in Tokyo?
Walk. Just walk everywhere, yeah.
Favorite thing to eat in Tokyo?
Oh, man. 7-Eleven is like a pretty common answer, which I love to do. But, yeah, I have a friend who has a restaurant out there that I really like, too.
All right. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing?
I've thought about that. I think, like, furniture or architecture, but if it was something that was like totally different, I also really like wine. So something in wine.
Coming soon.
Yeah.
One habit you're trying to build or break?
Trying to go to the gym more. Again, not a WSA plug here, but the gym here has been extremely helpful in getting that. And then what I'm trying to break is really like, again, I have 2 kids, so like disconnect from 5 to 8 every night and just like spend time with them.
Good answer. Last question. One word that best describes your outlook on the future.
Positive. Yeah.
You are a positive guy, and I notice, and everyone here, is a big fan of yours, so I appreciate you making the time today. This was long overdue, but one of my favorite guests so far on many levels.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you.